Hey guys, alright, let's use some common sense here. Beautiful day, man. It's like 15 degrees, not too bad. Trying to get some sun. So let's use some common sense, alright? We are made of protein, fat, and cholesterol. Our brain is 60% fat, 20 to 25% cholesterol. Your brain is, you have a fat head, okay? Every cell is lined with a lipid membrane. Every membrane is lined with lipid and cholesterol linings. We're basically, our bones are just minerals that are solidified. So we are protein, fat, and cholesterol. There is no carbohydrate that is building any aspect of your body. So get it out of your head that if you are eating carbohydrates, you think that you are giving yourself nutrition. You're not. You're strictly giving yourself calories, which is energy to run your body, which is important. But the issue is that if you're using the carbohydrates as your choice of fuel, anytime you ingest that, all right, the carbohydrates have to be consumed first. Therefore, if you have some fat that you'd like to lose, you wake up in the morning, you carb up, or you carb up all throughout the day. The body's continually trying to go through the carbs first to eventually go to the fat, but it doesn't need that because you keep on supplying it. Just like Jason Fung makes the analogy, he's on YouTube, Jason Fung, a nephrologist, big on the intermittent fasting and insulin resistance and stuff like that. So it's the same thing. You eat carbohydrates, your body goes to the carbohydrates, and then you have to wait for the fat. You can't access that unless you're being super physically active, where you're playing with your glycogen pathway and there is some fats that are being used. That's why when you're on a carbohydrate diet, you have to really exercise a lot. It's like people believe now that they have to run on a treadmill like a hamster, but it's just because they're getting overloaded in calories. We don't need as near the amount of calories. This even 2,000 calories for dudes is ridiculous. You don't need that, all right? When you eat what you're made of, proteins and fats, then you don't need as much. But if you're stuffing in empty octane fuel, all right, that you don't need and you don't realize that it's just fuel, then yeah, you're just gonna be hungry and you're gonna need a lot of calories because what you're eating isn't really nutrients dense. So this is why you're supposed to be eating fat and proteins, okay? Animal products, animal fat, eggs, all right? You have to eat meat. You're made of meat, okay? You're a living animal. So believe me, when you start eating animals, they pretty much have everything that you need too, because you are an animal too, all right? So the other aspect of it is that when you are eating carbohydrates, it spikes insulin the most. Insulin's job is when it senses nutrients, it is spiked, it's secreted from the pancreas, and it gives a signal to the cell to open itself up. It's like open up, and all the nutrients and the glucose and whatever is shuttled in there. However, because it's a storage hormone, it's something that is anabolic, it ends up also being a fat storage hormone. So again, while insulin is present due to a meal, okay, the insulin must return back to baseline before we have access to the fat again. So we keep locking ourselves out of our fat storage. And I don't care what, okay, the mainstream or the government or the freaking guidelines are saying, all right? It's common sense, guys. Something is wrong, okay? We've studied all the animals. We realize that animals can go through famines, seasons of much scarcity. They can go days without eating. They don't seem too bothered, do they, right? The only ones that would be bothered, I guess, would be grazing animals, but I'm talking about the carnivores. So if you think of it, they're not screaming and crying and going all hypoglycemic and getting headaches, okay, and acting all freaking squeamish in the forest. They're chilling out. So we're humans too. We're animals too, right? So why the hell are we hungry every 3 to 5 hours when we have sometimes, I lost 60 pounds, so I had 210,000 calories. Yet when I was using carbohydrates, I was hungry all the time. I was cheating, I was craving, all right? That just tells you, if you have a freaking brain, that we're not doing it right, that the suggestions are stupid. And then after, you just have to go like, well, what did hunters and gatherers do? Well, they ate a lot of friggin' animals, and they didn't get a lot of carbs, and they didn't have a lot of vegetables and fruits. They were seasonal. So just eat like our ancestors would. They ate fat and meat. It wasn't giving them cancer. They weren't freaking stroking out, okay? It was healthy. It's the human diet. People were drawing, okay, bison and stuff on cave walls. They weren't freaking, they were not drawing carrots, all right? They weren't drawing like soy burger patties, okay? Or fortified almond milks and stuff like that. They weren't doing it. They were freaking eating the animals. And at the end of the season, they would gorge on as much of the fruits that they could and the vegetation, which looks nothing like what it looks like right now. So once you eat what you're supposed to be eating, fat and protein, and the best source is animals. Sorry, vegans. Didn't mean to start something. I said that to one of my vegan friends. I was like, animal fat is the best fat of all, and he was like, ah! And I'm back. So yeah, he was like, shocked, and it's like, why? Show me the evidence. This whole like anal cancer, red meat stuff, that was about processed meat, okay? And again, it's all questionnaires. It's all this nutritional science, dudes. It can only, at its best, touch on associations. Here's an example. If I was looking, and every time, I wasn't from Earth, and I was kind of spying, I was an alien, I was checking out these fires. Every time a fireman, okay, was there, I'd see these red trucks with lights, I'd see a burning building. And I'd keep on seeing that, and I could make the association or the assumption that it's the firemen that are causing the fire, right? So I could just look at the scene of the disaster, like a heart attack where cholesterol is, for example, and what happens is I can make the assumption that it's the firemen causing the fire, when in reality, they're there trying to help. Sometimes they succeed in turning it out, sometimes they don't. Well, cholesterol, for example, is exactly the same, okay? I don't want to get too much into cholesterol, but it's not about the content of the cholesterol, and it's not about LDL even. It's about the quality of LDL. And yet the cholesterol and the LDL particles, along with the membranes and everything else, if you're eating vegetable oils that are highly inflammatory with omega-6, they're solvents, it's very fabricated. We're talking about the soybean, the canola oil, the vegetable that's a blend, anything besides coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil, and a concentrated medium chain triglyceride that's taken from coconut oil. And even those oils aren't necessarily essential. I rather you get your fat from animal products, butter, so even the oils, I'm not saying that the ones I mentioned are bad and stuff like that, but I noticed a lot of people that start on the ketogenic diet, they go a little overboard on the oils, and it gives them gastrointestinal problems while they're in their adaptive period, and then they stop it because they're like, oh man, no, it didn't work. It's like, okay, well, stop, drinking olive oil like Gatorade then. So anyways, fat and protein have a leptin response. Okay, what's leptin? It's a hormone, okay, that is secreted. It tells you to stop eating. That's why one aspect of the keto diet that controls the appetite is this leptin regulation that's finely calibrated, that is not on carbohydrates. And the other aspect is that because we're not eating carbs, and if we're applying intermittent fasting, then we're keeping insulin levels extremely low. We're not eating frequent meals, so we have full access to our fat stores. And as we stay in the ketosis for longer and longer periods, the mitochondria in our cell, which is basically where that ATP, that energy, that fuel currency that we have for our body, becomes more and more fine-tuned to produce ATP faster and faster, almost to the point of being as effective as glucose. Now, I said that glucose is not a structure. It doesn't build anything. So if you are going to use it, guys, just understand that when you take glucose, okay, either it's used immediately in the cell, and if it's not, then it has to be stored somewhere. And there is a storage place that's not fat. It's called glycogen, all right? Glycogen is sugar that is connected with water and stored in your muscles and your liver, okay, to be used for energy. Now, if you are not supplying the glucose, then you are becoming a fat burner, and you're becoming more and more effective as the years go by. And then you become very adaptive, because later on, if you do want to have, even fruits, a lot of fruits would push you out of ketosis, then you would burn through it and you'd easily return to using ketones. So what else? Oh yeah, we were talking about the leptin. So the leptin response happens when we eat meat and fat, because that's what we were supposed to eat. So that's why when we eat what we're supposed to eat, the human diet, then all the hormones start working for you instead of against you. So if you're eating carbohydrates, there's no leptin response. In fact, carbohydrates make you hungrier, okay? If you overshoot your carbohydrates, insulin spikes to get all that sugar out of your blood quickly. Now, I hear people saying, well, glucose is the preferred fuel. I don't think so. They say that because it'll always choose glucose before fat. Okay, but if I drink alcohol, then it stops using fat and carbs, and it goes after the alcohol to use as calories, because it's a toxin, it's a poison. And when you eat a lot of carbs, okay, it's such a massive influx of sugar that it's a state of emergency. Insulin spikes dramatically. The insulin can be toxic, and the high sugar can be toxic. That's why your body always goes and neutralizes the sugar. We got to use it. We got to figure out where to put it. Let's store it as fat, worst case scenario. But when that sugar's up in your blood, your body ain't happy. It's freaking using it really fast to get it out of there. High sugar is inflammatory. It's toxic. It's mutating. Okay? Insulin is toxic. Hyperinsulinemia. That's why type 2 diabetics that are already saturated with insulin resistance end up getting injections of insulin, and they rot away. Look up diabetes. You get amputations, cataracts, sores that don't heal, kidney failure. Why? Because the insulin, they're bathing in it and it's saturating it. So all of this heart disease has nothing to do with saturated fat. It actually has nothing to do with cholesterol, really. It has to do with toxic vegetable oils that are inflaming us, that the body has never had to ingest. These are not vegetables, they're seeds. Okay, so think of this, a field full of seeds, right? Okay, and how much of those seeds could you eat? Well, first of all, you can't, okay, because you just can't eat those seeds right out of the field. We can only eat those kind of things because of the milling process since, let's say, the agricultural age, and as technology advanced, right? So, these toxic vegetable oils, I would have to eat field. I'd have to be to get that omega-6 in the field, just grabbing seeds, stuffing in my face to get it. Think of toxic vegetable oils as a concentrated extract of a really bad thing. Omega-6 are bad in my book because we are consuming it insanely in everything. All of the fat in the packaged foods. We're not using lard. They're not using traditional fats and butters. They're using a canola, and they're hydrogenating it, which is making it solidify, which causes trans fat, oxidative stress, radicals. So when you eat the proper human diet, your protein, okay, has a leptin response, and it tells you, hey, dude, you've had enough. That's why when you eat a steak, okay, as good as it can be, filet mignon, you eat it. Okay, well, you can't just keep on ordering steaks, but you can keep on eating spaghetti. You can keep on having another piece of cake and then another. So carbohydrates don't have a leptin response because we were never made to have such access to this many carbs. There was no need for God to create that, or for evolution, whatever you believe in. I believe in intelligent design. Okay, I'm crazy. But anyways, we're fine-tuned, and we're put in a perfect environment. And every animal has their natural diet. And they're not going on YouTube and Googling shit, okay? They were in their natural environment, and because they're not sucking down all these carbs, okay, all of their hormones are giving them the intuitive cravings that is required in their environment for that species. And I'm telling you guys, when you push out the damn sugar, okay, you return to the fat and protein, okay, that supplies you sugar. Listen to me. If I have essential fats and I have essential proteins, guys, all right, they're essential because I need them and I can't play around to make them. Carbohydrates are not essential because of gluconeogenesis. Big words say you can make your own sugar. And the beauty of that is that the sugar that you are making is a supply and demand. Your body is way smarter than you and way smarter than the guidelines. The body will replenish glycogen stores. You don't need to carb up before and after training, all right? Your brain does run on some pathways that do require glucose, 30%. But you know what? 70% runs on ketones, and it runs better. Hence why epilepsy is treated with ketones, mood disorders, now Alzheimer's. Exona is exogenous ketones for Alzheimer patients. They're learning that there's glucose metabolism deficiency, unable to use glucose in Alzheimer patients. So feeding ketones crosses the blood-brain barrier and feeds the brain ATP where sugar can't. Okay, so you're looking at this and you're realizing that why the hell am I even bothering with the carbs? The carbs are making me hungry. I can't strategically eat what I know I should be eating because the cravings are out of whack. That's a sign that something's wrong, okay? And once you stop that, all of a sudden your hunger goes away. All of a sudden you go to your ideal body weight. All of a sudden your cognition improves. All of a sudden your hunger goes away. They're learning that cancer is a damaged or screwed up mitochondria. So the energy pathway is damaged. So it needs sugar, or I think glutamate or glutamine, which is actually an amino acid, but cancer cells basically in general love sugar. So if you're eating a lot of sugar, you're feeding your cancer cells. But what if you go into ketosis? Well, because the mitochondria of the cancer cells are defective, they cannot use ketones. So you're virtually feeding your body ketones. It's loving it, but the cancer cells are having the hardest time to develop ATP. So that is basically another benefit. So this keto diet that is super unhealthy, that's unnatural, that is extreme. Well, basically all the tests, scientific tests, show lipid profiles, amazing. Triglycerides go down. You do lose the weight. Hypertension is fixed. By the way, small secret, hypertension has nada to do about sodium, all right? It has to do with inflammation. It makes sense, right? You got fluid going through a tube, and because you have toxic vegetable oils, because you're eating too much sugar, because you're spiking your insulin, everything's getting damaged and puffy and inflamed, right? So what do you think happens when you narrow a tube with fluid in it? Pressure goes up. It's not the salt, okay? It is primarily inflammation. In fact, my father, I put him on the ketogenic diet. He started losing weight. He started reducing his inflammation. The insulin was low. The glucose was low. He came off all his meds. He came off every single med, all right? And I cured his hypertension. No, keto or low carb cured his hypertension by me telling him, oh yeah, you gotta up your salt big time. So he upped his salt, and he had to go off his blood pressure medication because he was going hypotensive. So anyways, I just had to go on this rant because, you know, it's not complicated nutrition. You know, they're complicating it for economic reasons. They want you to eat the carbs. Okay, all of the industry is revolving around carbs and vegetable oils. That's what they make. Every single thing in the middle of your aisle is basically vegetable oils and high fructose corn syrup and carbs and stuff like that, and then other ingredients that are probably super unhealthy for you. So this makes sense. Keto's not a fad diet. The fact that we call now low fat was, well, what was it before? Why are we specifying low fat? Well, because everything was higher fat before. All right, guys. So that's it. Rant is over. By the way, I'm on the third day of a fast. I don't know. I think I'm gonna break it tonight because I bought like steak, so I'm thinking of eating. I'll see how it goes. I just kind of randomly went into a fast because that's what I can do because I don't eat carbs. Booyah.